Would you say it hasn't popped for you yet?
Regardless of how it goes, I got to take responsibility for everything. And whenever my time is ready, I got to be able to walk through that door.
A chant of "We want Frank" is starting near the Garden. That's tough for a young man.
Dennis Cliff Smith Jr., born November 25th, 1997. Today's feature is one of the most talented point guards on the amateur level I've ever seen. His high school mixtape to me is still the best out there, with John Wall and Aquille Carr a close second and third. If you asked me in 2016 how good a player Dennis Smith Jr. would become, I would have said as good as any guard in the league currently. To me and a lot of people, that was his ceiling. Even when he got to college, you saw the talent, and most importantly, his game seemed perfect for the NBA at the time, as he had good height mixed with unseen athleticism, charisma, ball handling, and his backstory of rising through the ranks and rite of passage solidified his pedigree. All the way up to the NBA draft, I was high on Dennis Smith Jr. If you remember, this was the draft, one of the deepest of the decade that already includes 5 All-Stars, a handful of franchise players, and a guy in Jason Tatum that has a great chance of one day becoming a Hall of Famer. There were 13 point guards taken in total, 5 in the top 10, and to me, Dennis Smith Jr. had the most NBA potential of them all. He was taken 9th overall by the Dallas Mavericks. 6 teams that needed a point guard passed on him, including the New York Knicks, who took Frank Ntilikina when everyone thought and expected they would not only jump to take him, but that he would have been a perfect fit for a market and a team like New York, at the time when he still had confidence in his game and a chip on his shoulder since high school. I was upset Dallas took him. I'll explain why in a second. What's crazy is if you redrafted this class, many would still take Dennis Smith Jr. as high as he went, maybe even higher, since most understand that where you're drafted initially can make or break your career and turn you from a guy that's a franchise cornerstone, all-star, has a max deal, and is leading his team, to a has-been who many would officially consider washed after having a 3rd straight season averaging less than 10 points a game, played for 4 different teams in 5 seasons, and once even being assigned to the G League. Looking at what Dennis Smith Jr.'s career has become to this point, I'm shocked. Saddened a little because I liked his game a lot and understand that it's not all his fault. In 21-22, he played 37 games for the Portland Trail Blazers and averaged 5 points, 3 assists, and shot 22% from 3. He was waived on the 21st of February 2022 and hasn't been picked up by another team to finish out the season. He's 24 months away from being 25 and still positive an NBA team will give him a chance. But chance to do what? Not what he was expected to, as the potential is gone at this point, and so maybe his NBA chances. What happened? 3 reasons Dennis Smith Jr.'s growth was stunted. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. You can also send a super thanks by clicking the button below. Enjoy the video. Dennis Smith Jr. is a 6'2" point guard from Fayetteville, North Carolina that was a flat-out star in high school to say the least. By his sophomore year, he was a state champion, being named MVP of the championship game, averaging 17, 9, and 6, along with 2 steals. As a junior, Smith Jr. took off. Around this time, it was hard not to be aware of who he was, as YouTube blew his name out the waters behind his jaw-dropping mixtapes featuring his one-of-a-kind hezzy move that got better, as most times it led to a high-flying dunk at the rim or perfectly executed T-Mac fake crossover into a shot. He averaged 22 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds that year, and also the Gatorade Player of the Year for North Carolina, leading into what was for sure to be an All-American senior season and top ranking at his position. He tears his ACL, or at least one of them, doctors finding out he actually had 2 in his knee, and was ruled out for his entire senior year. He graduated in December that year and decided to attend his school of choice, NC State, early. Stunt number 1, being drafted by the Dallas Mavericks. To me, the most underrated part of the journey through the NBA is being drafted into a situation that best fits your game. As mentioned, I was super high on Smith Jr. before the draft and couldn't believe the Knicks passed on him to take Frank Ntilikina, who showed no obvious signs that he would be worth a top 10 pick. So as the next pick, being the Mavericks, are on the clock, I'm thinking please don't pick Dennis here. Yes, they needed a point guard, but the Mark Cuban, hands-on, European aspiring style of play they were, I just knew wouldn't work out well for Smith Jr., who needed to be somewhere like Atlanta or his hometown Charlotte or best case New York. For whatever reason, they did select him and handed him the keys to the point guard position from day one. I wasn't too hopeful, but surprisingly, he wasn't at all bad for the Mavericks. He was their second leading scorer and top 5 in rookie points per game at 15.2, 5 assists and 4 rebounds, playing 29 minutes and starting every game. But Dallas were 24-58 that year and able to select in the lottery that offseason, winning the 5th overall pick, which they traded along with a protected 2019 pick for the 3rd overall selection. That turned out to be Luka Doncic. And this was where the problem with him being taken by Dallas was for me. They never believed in Smith Jr., and when they took Luka, it killed his confidence. Granted, Luka became a great player and is one of the best players in the league at the moment, but no one knew that would be the case when they snatched the keys from Smith Jr. and gave it to Luka Doncic. When as a rookie, Smith was on his way. He was still confident in himself and that the team believed in him as a point guard. He was traded after 32 games his second season after Luka showed his greatness and disdain for his competition being on the same team. I think that, along with the Knicks letting him go after a great start with them as well, killed his confidence and typecasted him as a backup at best in the league, and that's the exact opportunities he began to get.
I found out after a nap that I was traded, so I feel like it's a big opportunity for me. I just got to make the most of it.
Stunt number 2, cannot stay healthy. This growth stunt could literally be the only reason on the board, as I think it's the most significant and most consistent of Dennis Smith Jr.'s basketball journey. Since before his senior year in high school having ACL surgery, Smith Jr. has had his body fail him time and time again. He's never played a full 82-game season or even close, mainly due to him not being able to stay on the floor. As he said himself, the league is very talented. If you're not available to play, it's next man up. After being traded to the Knicks, he averaged 14 points and 5 assists to finish out the 18-19 season. He began experiencing knee pain and only played in 34 games for them in 1920. He was traded after just 3 games with the Knicks the next year to Detroit, where he got injured again, tearing his meniscus, and only available for 20 games for a total of 23 on the year in 2020-21. Stunt number 3, potential officially sealed. As in sealed off and unable to be reached at this point. Not saying Smith Jr. isn't or can't be a nice player in the league, but like he said, the league is too talented to wait for a guy that hasn't popped off yet after 5 years. The fact he hasn't played the level of basketball expected to this point, what I like to call typecasted him into a role of nothing more than a backup or third string point guard. That's about all the opportunity he will likely get from here on. After signing with the Trailblazers September 2021, he played 37 games and was injured again, this time his elbow that cost him 3 to 4 weeks. He was waived soon after and has been out the league for months now, with no team picking him up thus far. In my opinion, because he fell so far from the potential he had as an amateur and early on in his career. Teams just don't believe. Sadly, after 3 years of injury after injury and poor averages, including his shooting still being way below average, it may be safe to say Dennis Smith Jr. as a player may be a bust. All in all, it hurts to say that. He's still 24, almost 25, so who knows? But as of now, it's looking like without a complete change to his game, meaning learning how to finally shoot from deep consistently, improving his decision making and defensive effort, and of course, opportunity, he may never play in the league at the level expected again for these reasons. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, Dennis Smith Jr.'s growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.